Most people assume that offering help on a highway is always the right move. But for those who work night shifts on roads, tow operators, highway patrol, emergency response crews, the logic is different. Refusing help isn't about rudeness. It's about reading a situation faster than the person offering can understand it. Night work on highways follows a different set of priorities than daytime work. Visibility is limited. Traffic behaves unpredictably, and the presence of additional people near a breakdown or incident often creates more risk than it solves. What looks like a simple gesture from inside a passing car can look like a liability from the roadside. This isn't about being ungrateful. It's about understanding that help, in certain conditions, becomes a variable that professionals have to manage. And sometimes, the best way to manage it is to decline it outright. Night shifts on highways operate in a narrower margin than day shifts. Lighting is inconsistent. Streetlights might cover one stretch and then disappear for miles. Flares and cones mark work zones, but they only work if drivers notice them in time. At night, that assumption breaks down more often. Traffic is lighter, but it's also faster. Drivers at 2 in the morning are either exhausted, overconfident, or both. The ones who are alert tend to overcorrect when they see something unexpected. The ones who aren't alert don't see it until they're too close. Either way, the roadside becomes a high-risk zone. For workers, routine is what keeps them safe. Tow operators park their trucks at specific angles to create a buffer. Road crews set up equipment in a sequence that minimizes exposure time. Patrol officers position themselves where they can see oncoming traffic and exit quickly if needed. Every action is rehearsed, repeated, and built around predictability. When someone pulls over to help, they usually don't follow that routine. They park wherever they can. They walk toward the scene without checking mirrors. They stand in places that block sightlines or create confusion for other drivers. They mean well, but they don't operate within the system that's already in place. At night, this disruption is amplified. There's less time to react, less light to see what's happening, and less room for error. A helpful stranger becomes another person to account for, another body near the road, another potential distraction or injury. Workers don't refuse help because they don't need it. They refuse it because accepting it would require them to shift attention away from the task and toward managing someone who doesn't know the protocol. That shift in focus is where mistakes happen. The decision to refuse help happens in seconds. There's no time to explain the reasoning. A tow operator sees a car pull over behind them. They wave the person off. The driver might think they're being dismissed or judged, but the operator is calculating. Is this person going to stand in the lane? Are they going to walk into my work zone? Are they going to get hit? Workers prioritize control over courtesy. If they can handle the situation alone, they will. Adding another person means adding unpredictability, and unpredictability is what causes accidents at night. Patrol officers deal with this constantly. Someone pulls over to report a hazard or offer assistance. The officer waves them on. The driver feels ignored, but the officer is thinking, I need this person out of here before another car comes around that curve too fast and doesn't see them in time. It's not personal, it's procedural. There's also the issue of liability. If a helpful stranger gets injured while trying to assist, the professional on site becomes responsible for managing that injury. That means calling for backup, redirecting resources, creating delays. What started as a simple tire change or debris removal now involves medical response, additional units, and extended road closure. Workers know this, so they refuse help not because they're self-sufficient, but because they're trying to prevent a secondary incident. Another factor is communication. Professionals use radios, hand signals, and established terminology. A well-meaning civilian doesn't know that system. They might step into a spot just as a piece of equipment is being moved. They might try to direct traffic without understanding how that interferes with what's already been coordinated. Their intentions are good, but their actions create friction. At night, friction is dangerous. There's no buffer, no second chance if someone missteps. So workers default to refusal. It's faster, it's clearer, and it keeps the scene contained. There are rules that govern roadside work at night, and none of them are written in manuals. They're learned through repetition and observation. One of those rules is this: the fewer people near the road, the better. It doesn't matter if someone has a jack or a flashlight or experience changing tires. If they're not part of the crew, they're a complication. That rule isn't about ego. It's about geometry. Every additional person on the shoulder increases the chance that someone will be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Another unwritten rule: never accept help from someone you can't see clearly. At night, that means almost everyone. A car pulls over 50 feet back. Someone gets out. The worker can't see their face, their hands, or their intentions. They don't know if this person is genuinely helpful or confused or impaired or worse. So they refuse. Not because they assume the worst, but because they can't afford to assume anything. Experience teaches workers to recognize patterns. A certain type of car pulls over. A certain tone of voice. A certain way of approaching. Over time, they learn which situations are genuinely helpful and which ones are about to become problems. Most of the time, it's the latter. There's also an unspoken agreement among professionals. If you're trained, you don't interfere unless you're asked. Off-duty paramedics, firefighters, and tow operators know this. They might stop to assess a scene, but they don't insert themselves. They offer once clearly and then they leave if the answer is no. Civilians don't usually follow that pattern. They linger. They insist. They assume their presence is welcome because their intent is good. That assumption is what creates tension. Workers aren't trying to be difficult. They're trying to keep the situation stable, and stability requires control. When help is refused and the person leaves, the scene usually proceeds without issue. The worker completes the task. Traffic continues. The risk level stays manageable. That's the outcome the refusal was designed to produce. When help is accepted, or when someone insists despite being waved off, the consequences vary. Sometimes nothing happens. The person helps, they leave, and everything is fine. But sometimes the person stands too close to the lane, or they startle when a truck passes, or they try to assist in a way that conflicts with what the worker is doing. And that's when secondary incidents occur. A tow operator is securing a vehicle. A helpful stranger is holding a flashlight. A car comes over the hill too fast, swerves, and clips the stranger. Now the scene goes from a routine call to a medical emergency. Resources are diverted. The highway is blocked longer. The original task is delayed. Workers know these scenarios. They've seen them. They've responded to them. That's why they refuse help. Not because it won't work out most of the time, but because the times it doesn't work out are catastrophic. There's also the issue of efficiency. A trained worker knows exactly what to do and in what order. They don't need to explain. They don't need to coordinate. They just execute. When someone else is involved, that flow is interrupted. Questions get asked. Instructions have to be given. The task takes longer, and the longer it takes, the more exposure there is to passing traffic. In some cases, refusing help actually improves safety outcomes. The worker stays focused. The civilian stays in their car. The scene remains controlled. That's not always intuitive, but it's consistent with how night shift road work operates. There are times when help is accepted. If a worker is injured, or if a situation is escalating beyond what one person can handle, they'll call for it. But that call is deliberate. It's not open-ended. It's specific. And it's directed at people who understand what's needed. Civilians almost never meet that criteria, not because they're incapable, but because they don't operate within the same framework. They see a problem and want to solve it. Workers see a system and want to maintain it. Those two perspectives don't always align. Refusing help on a highway at night isn't about pride or independence. It's about managing risk in an environment where risk is constant and margins are thin. Workers make that decision quickly, not because they're dismissive, but because they're trained to prioritize control over courtesy. For people who offer help, the refusal can feel cold. But from the roadside, it's just another part of the routine, another variable managed, another decision made in the interest of keeping the scene stable. These patterns make sense only from inside the work. To everyone else, it looks like unnecessary caution. But caution is what keeps night shifts predictable, and predictability is what keeps them safe.